it's going to be a very contentious time between a group of people who are totally enthralled and follow him lock, stock, and barrel and would do anything for him. It's going to divide the country even more than it is now. It's going to be a very, very bad time, I'm afraid. And again, I don't mean to sound hyperbolic, and I'm certainly not the only one who holds this view.
Well, about 5.8 million people who were born in Puerto Rico live in the US, and there are significant numbers of Puerto Ricans in the battleground state of Pennsylvania. Trump himself did not comment on the offensive remarks about the country, but he did step up his commitment to crack down on immigration, promising the largest deportation program in American history and attacking his opponent, Kamala Harris.
Over the past 4 years, Kamala Harris has orchestrated the most egregious betrayal that any leader in American history has ever inflicted upon our people. She has violated her oath, eradicated our sovereign border, and unleashed an army of migrant gangs who are waging a campaign of violence and terror against our citizens.
Well, there were more personal attacks on Kamala Harris. Another of the speakers, Trump's former personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, accused her of siding with terrorists.
The Palestinians are taught to kill us at 2 years old. They won't let a Palestinian in Jordan. They won't let a Palestinian in Egypt. And Harris wants to bring them to you. They may have good people. I'm sorry, I don't take a risk with people that are taught to kill Americans at 2. I'm on the side of Israel. You're on the side of Israel. Donald Trump's on the side of Israel. And they're on the side of the terrorists.
Well, Kamala Harris herself had this response to that rally.
I think last night Donald Trump's event in Madison Square Garden really highlighted a point that I've been making throughout this campaign. He is focused and actually fixated on his grievances, on himself, and on dividing our country. And it is not in any way something that will strengthen the American family.
Well, Fred Trump is Donald Trump's nephew and author of All in the Family, The Trumps and How We Got This Way. And he joins us now. Good evening to you, Fred.
Good evening. How are you?
Very well, and good to have you with us tonight. Let me just begin by asking you what you make of that rally, a big occasion for the Trump campaign in Madison Square Garden in New York. Does Donald Trump need to do more to distance himself or even to denounce some of the comments that were made?
First of all, he doesn't have the courage to denounce those comments, and I'm sure he was cheering them on. If whatever it takes to get his crowd, his base ramped up, he's all for it. So you won't see him denouncing at all.
I mean, you have been quite outspoken in your criticism of Donald Trump. Do you agree with what we heard from Kamala Harris there, that he is focusing on division?
Oh, sure. And I predicted this when the book came out on July 30th. This was just going to become a nasty race to the bottom with him. And he's proving it day after day after day, not just his personal attacks on Kamala Harris, but calling America a garbage pail. America is the greatest country in the world. And he has to prove his worth to his base again, that America is a lousy country and only he can fix it. Well, he didn't do such a great job the last time.
When you were growing up, did you ever expect your Uncle Donald, to become president of the United States?
No, certainly not. Not even as short ago as 10 years ago. Never thought it could happen. He dabbled in politics for years. So that was mostly for business reasons. And he came close in 2011, but decided against it. So the answer for me is no. I really didn't expect it up until, as I detail in the book, when Barack Obama started roasting him at the Correspondents' Dinner in 2015. That really set him off to run.
So you think it was those comments from Barack Obama that first inspired him for his first run at the presidency?
Yes, I absolutely do. Donald does not like to be ridiculed. He doesn't like to be labeled a loser. And he was by Obama, and people were laughing at him, and that sets him off the wall. And in the room I'm in right now, I was with my wife watching that night, and I said, Obama just awoke the sleeping giant, and the rest, unfortunately, was history.
Donald Trump, like yourself, was, of course, a businessman. What made you decide to write this book, which does expose quite a lot of detail about your family and about Donald Trump?
Yes, very quickly. Originally, the book was to be written by my wife, Lisa, and I. We thought about it in 2018. Our young son, William, has complex disabilities, and we wanted to pretty much write a detailed book on what we did with William and how we advanced him through these most difficult years. When Donald started running in 2015, William was still living at home. Our two older children were living in Manhattan. And we started having dead animals thrown on our lawn, reporters coming up to our house unannounced. So we didn't want to say anything at that time. And the more I thought about the book, I saw the parallels between my father and William, and I thought that would be a great story. And to do that, I needed to tell the story in a much more nuanced way than other books that are out there. This is a personal account. These are not, stories from someone who may have worked with Donald for 5 minutes or, if not having met him at all. And it was also January 6th, 2021, that I saw such a demonic change in Donald that I also didn't anticipate. But his need to always win was the driving force behind that. And he put a lot of people in danger. He put the country in danger. So I needed to give an accounting of my lifetime experiences with Donald to see how he led to this point in his life.
January the 6th, of course, was the occasion of the riot at the Capitol building. But
Right.
you have been and are still very, very critical of Donald Trump. Other members of your family have been very actively involved in advising him and, of course, actually taking part in his campaign for re-election. How difficult has it been for you to deal with that and to deal with what is now apparently quite a significant rift in your family?
Yes, it is. And I anticipated that, but the other family members, namely my cousins, they really had no choice but to back their father. And on one level, I want to say, okay, that's great, that's loyalty, but he's pushing this country into a dangerous position. I had a choice, and I chose what I thought was best for the country, and not just saying I would vote for Kamala Harris, but I will campaign on her behalf if I'm asked in the last 7.5 days. She's the only one to keep us moving forward in our country and keeping our democracy intact.
And have you spoken to Donald Trump, to your uncle, in person? Have you talked to him about what you clearly see as the mistakes that he's making?
No, I have not. After he said what he did about my son William, that he should just die because of his disabilities, that was a bridge too far for me. I did reach out during the first assassination attempt to say that Lisa and I and the kids were thinking about him and glad that he was okay and that we wished him a speedy recovery from his injury.
Just to pick you up on that comment, so your son William, who is severely disabled, you're saying that Donald Trump suggested that he should die?
Yes, we had a medical fund set up for William, and I asked Donald some questions about it, and he just said, "Your son doesn't recognize you. Let him die and move down to Florida." To which I responded, "He does recognize me, Donald, and he recognizes everybody in his life." Donald has never met William and never asked to meet William. So the fact that he could come and say that William didn't recognize me is a pretty ridiculous statement.
Have you had much of a backlash from other members of the Trump family who, as we've said, are much closer to Donald Trump?
Just the typical rejoinders from them that it's all lies, and I did this just for the money, and it's just nonsense. It was totally expected. They do it all the time.
But you must have known when you wrote this book that you were going to get that backlash, not just from other members of your family, but
Right.
from millions of Trump supporters across the country who've accused you of being of embittered, of bearing a grudge, and so on.
I'm not bitter. I'm sorry that this happened with my family. As I say, it's a very nuanced accounting. I tell stories of my good times with Donald throughout the years. I mean, we share the passion with golf. In fact, he taught me how to play golf. We're both relentless. But I had more of an important mission ahead, and that is what is leading me now to be a vocal advocate on behalf of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Lisa and I just started a foundation called williamsjourney.org. And we're going to use this platform to speak out for a large population, not just in this country, the United States, but in all countries. Each country I am interviewed in, the UK, Australia, India, the Middle East, the disability issue is becoming the forefront. And I'm sorry when Donald supporters will make their comments on Facebook or whatever and just trash me. I'm trying to use this as a platform for doing good stuff.
And this race for the White House is clearly neck and neck, too close to call, according to most who are following this race very closely. Do you think Donald Trump is heading for another term in the White House?
You're absolutely right. It is as close as can be, certainly as close as any election I've been around, and I've been voting since 1980. We're just going to have to see. But if anyone's expecting a result on November 6th or 7th, just get a lot of tea boiling, because it's going to take days, if not weeks, if not months, for this to be cleared up.
And what do you think another term in the White House for Donald Trump, if he does win, if he does return to the White House, what do you think that would mean for the United States? And of course, for your personal campaign there for more help and more support for people with disabilities?
Yeah, well, I think it'll be a very dangerous time, and I don't want to be hyperbolic. It's going to be a time of retribution. His Project 2025, for anybody who's not read it, I urge you to Google it. Right in the forward, if it wants to get rid of the Department of Education, which means minority kids in this country are going to have a lesser education. People with disabilities who are children who get therapies and services through schools, that's going to be diminished. That's just one thing. The migrant issue of being able to just ask anybody who looks like they're from a foreign country for their documents and the ability to send them out of the country. It's a place that I never thought could happen, a place that we may be going that I don't think many people thought was possible.
So you fear that those deep divisions that we've seen in US society could be made worse?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
In what way?
It's going to be a very contentious time between a group of people who are totally enthralled and follow him lock, stock, and barrel and would do anything for him. It's going to divide the country even more than it is now. It's going to be a very, very bad time, I'm afraid. And again, I don't mean to sound hyperbolic, and I'm certainly not the only one who holds this view.
Fred Trump, Donald Trump's nephew, author of All in the Family, The Trumps and How We Got This Way. Good to speak to you. Thanks so much for joining us on Times Radio.